Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. Thank you to everybody that's been sharing and listening. Our YouTube channel is now over 10,000, rapidly approaching 11,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. So thank you, everybody. Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that looks at important topics in business and life and shares them in a fun and lighthearted way. And we always like to get the team in to ask their questions from their unique perspective. And that usually happens when we have a specialist. We've got a specialist today, and we'll get to them very shortly. But as always, we've got to start with the regular team. So let's check in. Danette, how are you going this week? How's things?
Yeah, good, Jez. Dad continues to get better, so still down at Mum and Dad's, but about to head off to Manila and Phuket next week. So I won't be on next week's podcast, but I will be there in spirit. So yes, very excited to have a bit more travel, and yeah, life's good. So great to see everyone too.
Yes, and if people want to follow that, they can check out the Magical Learning social media where there'll be some images from that journey. So if people want to follow along with Danette there, I highly recommend you go follow us there as well. Let's go over to Al. Al, it's been a little while, but you're on. You were actually the first one on the call today. So how's things?
I'm excited to be back, Jez. Yes, everything's going really well up here. Enjoying the sunny weather and very exciting day today. Our youngest daughter, Millie, has her Year 12 formal on. So hair and makeup and a dress.
Oh my goodness, where's that time gone, Al? Ouch.
It has gone very quickly.
Al, is that you getting your hair and makeup done and a dress?
Yeah, you can see I'm a little shiny on top today. That could be the hair done.
Well, Al, it's great to have you on, and thanks for slotting us in with what I assume is quite a hectic schedule of organising stuff today. So I appreciate you being on the Magical Learning Podcast. John, how are you going this week? How's things?
Yeah, good, Jez. I'm up in Brisbane at the moment as well. So up here seeing the daughter and her partner and the nearly 1-year-old grandson. So having a great time.
Very nice. Well, enjoying the warm weather there as well. That's it's looking good. The recording studio's coming in nice this week as well. John, last week had a pool table in the recording studio. This week you've got some nice sort of plants in the background.
Yeah, it's just the backyard. It's quite nice up here.
Nice.
I could live here.
Yeah.
I don't think they want me to. I could live here.
Well, great to have you on, John. And our guest today, Alicia Embleton. How are you going? How's things?
Yeah, I'm really great. Thanks, Jez. So for me, for the week, like it's been actually a really fun creative week. I have actually been working with a production company this week around, just kind of getting some footage for a new program that I'm releasing. So it's been awesome fun just getting to explore the story of it and creating the audios and the visuals and everything, but just really flexing that creative muscle. It's been fun this week.
That is really cool. We're happy to have you on today to hopefully flex it a little bit more. But before we get into anything, we talked about this, we had a little pre-production meeting, but you have these awesome plants in your background, and I direct people to the YouTube or Spotify to check out the video of this. But tell us a little bit about that, because it looks great.
Yeah, well, thank you. So they're actually all real plants. It was something that I kind of created in COVID when we were all sitting here looking at the screens on the computer, and I still wanted to see the green. So now I get to see the green when I'm looking at the video.
Love it. Well, that's a great tactic for us all out there. I think I'm wearing green today. John's kind of got the same option going on in his screen at the moment. So it's a little, not as much for Al and Danette today, but hopefully they can look at some greenery later on. Well, Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today. And I was going to say, before we get into today's topic, which really, we got a lot of questions from the team, and so we've got to get into that ASAP. But before we get into that, we've got to ask, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself for listeners that may be being introduced to you for the first time?
Yeah, sure. So I am a child development coach. I think that's probably the big, nuts and bolts of all of this. So I work with primary school children is my area of specialty and focus, and working with them, their parents, the schools, that whole kind of community that helps to raise these kids, and work with these kids to look at developing some of these really core, essential, fundamental skills that we need in life to be able to just deal with things and to really kind of just succeed at what we do. So I have 3 pillars that is kind of the core fundamentals of my work. So and it's like a 3-legged stool, if we think of it. We need all 3 for the stool to stay balanced. So the 3 pillars that I work with are resilience, authenticity, and an entrepreneurial spirit. And you can kind of balance on that stool without one or maybe even without 2 of those pillars for any kind of short period of time. But to be able to stay comfortable, to be able to stay balanced for the long term, you need all three. So those are the three pillars that I work with in what I do.
Well, amazing. And already I think that's going to be making people's brains fizz a little bit. But you sent through a topic which was really, I guess, sort of specializing on that a little bit, which is the resilience gap, why today's kids struggle to bounce back and how to fix it. A really important topic, I think, for a lot of people, and I think a really interesting one. So I guess before we get into the questions, and I know Jeanette's going to get into the definition of resilience and what have you, but just broadly, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose this topic?
So this particular topic, it's close to my heart. There's so many amazing programs and so much amazing learning that these kids get in resilience, which is fantastic. But if we come back to that three-legged stool again, that's only one of the three that we need. So that's kind of where we're falling down with this gap, is that we need all three. And there's just not a lot of that happening out there for these kids.
Amazing. All right. Well, then I think we've got to dive right into the questions because I think that we've got a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to start with Jeanette because Jeanette's always got good questions to tee us up. So Jeanette, go ahead and tell us a bit about why you chose the questions as well.
So my first question, because I always like people to define words, because resilience is one of those words that if you ask 10 people, they've probably all got a different definition. So I thought, let's start with you just defining, because it is one of those three key pillars. Tell us what resilience means to you, Alicia.
Yeah, sure. Because I agree. Everyone's got a slightly nuanced definition. For me, resilience is that capacity to adapt, to recover, and to continue functioning in the face of stress. So it might be adversity, failure, change, whatever kind of stress there, but it doesn't mean avoiding the particular hardship, but it's being able to work through it and learn from it so that they can then keep going without being permanently derailed by whatever it is that they've faced. So, yeah, I guess within the child context, it's for kids being able to develop the capacity and the skills so that they can remain balanced in all facets of their life. So at home, at school, with their friends, in all of the areas.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I love that balance. And I was reading something yesterday and they were talking about the fact that, as parents, often parents try to help kids avoid things that will impact their resilience. But in fact, how we learn to cope with stuff is actually to go through it. So I love how you defined that and the fact that you talked about learning from that as well. So my next question is then how does unstructured time help with that, with resilience?
So just to clarify, how do you define unstructured time?
You just hang out by yourself. You can make up games. You can lie in a hammock and dream and watch the sky go by. It's anything where it's not, you have to be here at this time. These are the outcomes. So it's more that space where you can let your brain wander, let your body move and stuff like that without someone going, no, that's wrong or that's right or you need to do it this way at this time.
Yeah.
Is that how you do it? I'm curious how you define it.
No, look, I understand. That's where I thought you were going with it. They define simple activities in that sort of context. So we're on the same thing. I wanted to make sure we were using the same language. And I think for me, that unstructured time, and I guess it's really key to being able to remain in balance. And that's a real key part of this definition of resilience, because this unstructured time, it really helps to create the space that our brains are needing to be able to, work through those challenges, those hardships, those failures. So it's time that is then fostering that creativity. It's triggering that innovative thinking for these kids. This time is really that valuable opportunity for stimulating those unconscious thought processes as well. All of us as adults can remember at least one moment in time, probably happens more regularly. We're getting ready in the morning, we're having the shower, doing our hair, and we get a massive brainwave and this spark, brilliant idea. That's actually these simple activities and that unstructured time helping these things to create. So it's so important for being able to have that resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit and the authenticity and all of that. But it's just so critical for it.
Love your answer. And it's so on the brain science. So it's, our brain does all of that heavy lifting on the brakes when we're just watching clouds float by and stuff. So love that, Alicia. I'll hand it over to the rest of the team now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you both. Really interesting. Well, I think let's just keep this going. So, Al, I might go to you. Al, what was your question? Tell us a little bit about why you chose it.
Yes, hi, Alicia. My question, I guess, is coming from the parents' perspective, where I'm wondering how parents can sort of step back in supportive ways to allow children to experience struggle, make mistakes, and learn to problem solve on their own.
I love that question, Alan. I really do. It is just it's fantastic. Speaking from both the child development specialist and the role of a parent, this is the hardest part of the parenting journey. It is that learning, how do we let our kids experience struggle and make mistakes? Because our natural instinct as parents is to want to protect them from harm. But what we're actually doing in doing that is creating harm if we do that all the time, because these kids then don't actually learn to identify how to actually process through those mistake moments. So as parents, our job can really be beneficial in identifying where are those safe risks that we can let these kids make those mistakes and work through those struggles while being there as the safety net, because that's the real sort of critical part of our role here as parents, is not to fix it for them, but to be here to catch them if they falter and they need us. But let them work through the problems. Provide that little bit of guidance. Even better, provide the guidance with questions so that they're still having to work it through themselves so that they can learn how to solve these problems. If we don't let kids face these situations, they never learn to deal with discomfort. And we actually then just simply, we're just we're setting them up to fail, really, in that sense. I think I actually just put a post on Instagram recently on this discomfort topic, even because when children don't learn to manage that, are unintentionally, as parents, training the future of imposter syndrome and anxiety because they don't know how to understand and how to process through those uncomfortable times. It's part of the growth journey. It's part of us just simply personally and professionally growing in our life. They need to be able to work through that. Now, no parent wants that future for their child. They want them to be able to have these skills. And so it's just about teaching kids the difference between good discomfort and bad discomfort, because there are differences, and that's what's really important for them to learn.
That is, Alicia. I think what really stands out for me there is asking them questions to help them work their way through it versus just giving the answer, which feels so much easier.
It does.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Al. And thanks, Alicia. I'm going to throw over to John now. John, what was your question? Tell us a little bit about why you chose it.
Okay. So, hi, Alicia. Nice to meet you. My question came out of just reading, the notes that were put into the email. Part of it was there are so many resilience programs and courses that we put in front of kids. There's a heap of mental health programs, and they're all they're all good. They're all necessary. We've got overprotected parents, and yet we still have kids that struggle being resilient. And I guess that's where my sort of question came from. We've got all this stuff in place. Why is it not working? So my question was around why have we been so slow to pick up that the techniques that have gotten us where we are today have created the issue that we have?
So I think there's probably two thoughts that come to mind. The first one is the first part of what you were saying there is that why have we got these issues? I come back to that three-legged stool.
Yeah.
We've got all these resilience programs, but what about the other two legs? Like they're missing. We're teetering on a one-legged stool there. But to your second part of your question here around slow to pick up the techniques that have actually gotten us to where we are, I think our default mode in when we're being unconscious is what we've already learned in our lives. So to make change in how we approach things, we need to bring consciousness to it. And we also need to be really aware of what has been and where do we want to be moving to. in that conscious decisions and choices in all of those moments. I guess it might sound like a little bit of a cop-out, but we also need to acknowledge that the world we're living in today is different to the one that we all grew up in 20 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it is, because technology is evolving at a rapid pace. And for all of us as adults, it's not anything that we've ever lived in and experienced in our youth. And so there are many learnings from our childhood that really they were great for us. You know, we learned these different sort of pillars and things, but we need to tweak them in how we teach them today. And that's the part that I think is where we're kind of faltering a little bit in. We're still trying to teach in what has been rather than in this new world that is here. And with the rapid pace of technology, we're kind of learning on the fly for a lot of these things, you know, both about what's great of all of these technologies, but also what is harmful. We're finding out after the fact around where things were really, really bad. And then we're trying to scramble to fix it. And so it's just simply things are happening so fast that we're trying to build the plane as we're flying it, as the metaphor goes. So, you know, I guess change isn't something that humans really like at all, full stop, the end. Our default position is to be really uncomfortable when things are changing and when it feels uncertain, because I guess our brain is then going, well, we need safety, we need certainty. And so it starts going, no, I don't want that. So by default, we're not going to change our techniques unless there's some sort of significant reason for us to actually go through that uncomfortable change.
Yeah, cool. No, thank you for that. I mean, even just thinking, I guess I had a preconceived answer or part of an answer that, you know, how much, you know, playing outside as opposed to sitting in front of a computer nowadays is very different to growing up. But you're right that the way my parents brought me up wasn't too different to the way their parents brought them up. There were changes, obviously, whereas the way my kids are going to bring up their kids and the technology and how quickly it's changing and evolving, it's, yeah, you are flying the plane. You're building the plane while you're flying it because the evolution is so fast.
And that's where the consciousness is so important in how we're facing each of those moments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And yeah, thank you so much, Alicia, again there. I'm going to go to my question here because I know sometimes things map onto different things. So I was thinking, what elements of the things that you've learned would you say could be implemented for adults as well? Do you think that this type of thinking may be more important for us all to know about in our day-to-day life?
So what is it that I teach that would be important for adults as well? Everything. That's the short answer. Everything is critical for kids and adults. We're building on the learning, those building blocks kind of as we develop. So as kids, we might have a few blocks as the foundation pieces that we're learning, but then we build on that continually through our life. Everything is suitable for kids and adults here. There's actually nothing that I teach or that I wrote in my book that I haven't used myself at some point. Like these are some of them more often than others. Like these are all really important skills for every single person. And many of us didn't have the opportunity to embed all of these learnings early in life. And we've sort of gone through the learning journey as an adult. And it doesn't have to be that tough if we can teach these skills to kids earlier though. You know, at the moment, we start teaching a lot of these more proactively in adolescence, but they've already got the cognitive ability to learn it sooner. So let's teach it sooner. Let's get in early. And I guess that's why, and the whole point of my work and why I've chosen to focus particularly on primary school age kids, because that's where they have got the ability for that. So I'm also teaching all these learnings to the parents and the adults through the workshops and the coaching that I do with them, both the parenting and as well as in that sort of corporate workshop space. So all of these is relevant for all of us.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the case because I always find when I'm reading these things as like stats about kids or whatever and stuff, you start going like, oh, learnings that kids should have. You go, maybe I should, like, there's different things that I could pick up here that I could probably implement in my life that are broad scale type things. I guess just to quick piggyback. It's okay if you don't, but are there any of these like learnings that you've sort of learned, I guess, that has like impacted how you live or like how you behave?
I would say all of them again. No, I think like, yes, it is all of them. But I think if I was to pause and sort of try and think of one in particular, I think the authenticity pillar is a really foundational one. So I define authenticity as self-trust, and that is going to just show up in so many different ways for us. It's not just necessarily about going out and having the bright purple hair or however it is we want to express ourselves. It's how are we internally? And that's my definition. And I think for me, that's one of the things that we see a lot of teenagers faulting is like they reach that teenage years and they start faltering in that self-trust space. And I put my hand up going, oh, I was one of those teenagers as well. And so I've then learned and sort of re-embedded all of these things in my adult journey. You know, through my 20s, there was a whole big thing there. And so I've got so much experience through my 20s, my 30s, and now into my 40s that, you know, I can pull all of that into my journey. But I think for me, that's the one pillar that I commonly see people faltering in. And it's the kids as well as the adults that I work with. And like I said, I've been there myself on my journey too.
No, thank you for that, Alicia. That's so interesting, and I think it's a good one for all of us to kind of keep in mind. You know, especially since you're saying it's such a foundational part. Like it's not really something that we're taught, so you kind of got to go out there and get it. Let's go to Marg's question. So Marg often does like offer a parenting side in the question. So this is a perfect chat for Marg's question. So let's start here. I'll start with our first question, then we can do the second question after. What are 3 practical things parents or teachers can do right now to help build resilience in children?
So I think there are so many facets to building resilience, and there are so many different ways that we can go about teaching it. There are lots of different practical ways for it. So I think what we need to remember is that one of the biggest protective factors of resilience is that parent-child bond and that relationship there. And it could be the parent-child, but there is also a lot of evidence that talks to the relationships with trusted adults, like their school teacher, as being another one of those really great bonds that they need. That strong supportive relationship with the parent or the trusted adult, like their teacher, that can significantly enhance their resilience and their ability to bounce back and handle those sort of stress situations. And so I think drawing on that thread, one of the biggest things that we can do is teach through doing. So when adults are facing stress, we're facing setbacks, we're facing challenges, share our process and the challenges that we're going through in an age-appropriate way about how we maintain that positive attitude. How are we working through it? How are we maintaining our resilience? One thing that I find is that we often surprise ourselves as adults when we have to be consciously thinking through our steps like that. There are many things that we often do that we're not realizing that we even do. And so it helps bring those conscious learnings to the children. You know, I think there's a lot of tools and techniques and things that we can then impart through that journey. So teaching through doing benefits a child, but it also is actually benefiting the parent because they learn more about themselves and what tools, techniques, coping mechanisms that they're actually using on their journey. So I think that's one way that we can practically do this. I think there's also teaching self-compassion and compassion for others. So self-compassion is a really powerful tool for navigating and overcoming failures and setbacks, but it's also a way of relating to ourselves kindly. So it's not about comparing or judging ourselves against others, because that's a pitfall that self-esteem and self-confidence and all those things start to then spiral from. But this self-compassion involves recognizing our own humanity, acknowledging our imperfections, and like really offering ourselves that same level of care and inner strength and that self-assurance so that we can actually feel comfortable with ourselves. So the self-compassion approach, like this really, it helps children to bounce back from setbacks with greater ease and with their confidence then, because we've maintained that in that process. So I think that's probably a real critical one as well, is that, yeah, that commitment to those self-care practices, those healthy boundaries, that seeking support from others, like all those things that come into that self-compassion there. And then I think the third one, because I think there were, what were three practical things? And I think the third one I would recommend is encourage age-appropriate acts of independence. Now, we've probably heard something like this before, and we're then going, well, I mean, they do things and that's great. But if I go back to what John was saying earlier in the call, like in how our childhoods and what they looked like, how much are these kids actually going down to the local park by themselves? How much are these kids actually going to the aisle across from us in the shops to be able to pick up something that we need for that grocery shop as well? How much are we actually allowing those little acts of independence with our kids? I know from the work that I do with parents and things, it actually surprises a lot of people when they pause and really take note of how much the kids are with the parents all the time. And we need to be able to encourage those little acts of independence to be able to support that self-efficacy development for these kids.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks for those. That was a really good detailed answer. So I appreciate that. And we'll go to Marg's second question here, which is, has society become too obsessed with safety and success, both of those in quotation marks for our listeners, to let kids fail and grow?
Again, I love this question because I think it is just hits on the money. So for me, the challenge isn't around the obsession with safety and success. It's the process and the mindset in which we're putting around that journey. So, for example, our safety obsession is great when we're considering how we can be the safety net for our child while they work through something with the struggles and mistakes that they're making. But we also want to ensure that the child still feels a sense of safety, because that's crucial for the brain functioning. And, we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all of that sort of world there. But they can feel a sense of safety without us doing it for them. We don't need to be bundling them up in cotton wool either and not letting them face those struggles or mistakes. So there is a way that we can create an inner sense of safety for these kids and being that safety net for them without taking the struggle away. So I think, again, it just comes back to that mindset of things there. So, and it's the same for success. I guess it comes down to the question for me, and it's one of the things that I actually sit down and work with all of my kids when we go through the process. How do we define success? How are we actually teaching this definition of success with kids? Because it's great to have an obsession with success if it has the right definition. So is success trying something new when we might be a little bit scared to do it, or that you might not have ever done it before and so you have no idea how to do it? That's great definition of success if that's what it is, doing the attempt. But if our definition of success is getting it right in that moment, then we failed them. So the challenge that we're facing is that we have ourselves and we're teaching these kids that success is getting it right and being perfect. And what we need to do is actually change how we define success and therefore how we're teaching success to our kids. You guys might have heard there's a bit of a thing running around the various different social channels. And I think it was even on the radio here recently in Canberra that there's a study done by a car company, I think it is, internationally. It was around Gen Z. And this study is actually, they found that these kids are so scared they are not filling up their car with petrol because they might get it wrong. And they don't want to look like they don't know what to do. And so these cars are running out of petrol and are stopping because they are so scared to fill up a car with petrol. That's not okay. Like, this is what we've created in this definition of success. getting it right, being perfect. Well, no. The definition of success in that example is getting out, working out how to open the fuel cap, which petrol pump you need to be getting, and giving it a crack. That's to me is the part that we've really missed there.
Alicia, you've reminded me of when we were little kids. Mum let us out to play one day, and we were always let out to play. And we decided to play petrol stations, so we got the hose. And we opened the cap because back then they weren't locked. And we filled it up with water. Do not do that. We do not encourage that in our audience. But that was the result. And Mum reversed the car out because she didn't know we'd done this. Reversed the car out and went, kept going. Like they must have flushed the tank or something, but it all worked out. But please, our audience, do not do that. That's what happened.
They flushed the tank with your help. You started the process with the water.
That's it. That's the unscheduled maintenance that kids can sometimes provide. Well, Alicia, we don't have a lot of time, but maybe I'll just grab a quick thought on this final question since we're here, and it's kind of going off a little bit of your idea, maybe about success. I thought that was a good idea. But here's just a final question from Graham here is, if Hermione Granger were to casually drop her wand in your lap, what one magical change would you make to Australia's education landscape to improve children's resilience? We like the name dropping of magical learning subtly thrown in there, but no, Alicia, go ahead.
Love it. That is fantastic. So I guess if I had the magical wand ready to sort of wave and to be able to change this one thing, it would be getting everyone to talk about more than resilience. Because I think, like I've said, resilience alone that's not enough. And that's why we still are seeing this continuing rise of these mental health challenges that are facing the youth today. So my magical wand is 3 pillars, and we have all 3 legs of the stool.
I like it. Well, that's hopefully coming to some sort of new magical movie soon, is the new three-pillared stool spell. But no, thank you for that, Alicia. Let's grab some final thoughts from everybody, because what an amazing conversation. I've been jotting down a heap of notes. I might start with you, Danette. Danette, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
I really love your 3-pillar stool. Like, that's just such a great idea because it is more than resilience. And, being able to grow this in kids, I love the idea that it's kids when they're young, when their brain's really malleable. And that whole thing about success is not about being perfect. It's actually about giving it a go. Again, I'm going to say, parents, please don't let your children near the hose after listening to this. But a great interview. Thank you so much, Alicia. Great to see you again too.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Danette. Al, I might grab some final thoughts from you. So any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Yes, I really love that definition of success. I train people in the crane industry at the moment, and the biggest thing I see is they're so afraid. They've got memories of school where they were, basically took away the belief that they were dumb. Coming into a classroom after so many years, they are so scared. I'm going to put something along the top of my whiteboard that success is having a crack. It's not about getting it right. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Alan.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Great to see you again. John, any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd love to explore the authenticity further with Alicia at some stage. I think your definition is slightly different to what my initial thoughts were, and I think, it is really good. But yeah, those little acts of independence, age-appropriate acts of independence that you give your kids, and as Al said, having a crack, having a go, to me that does go back to, I don't care, any era. It's you have a go and see how it works out, and if it doesn't work out, you have another go, and if that doesn't work out, you have another go. You keep trying things. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you, John. Great to see you again as well, and it's nice to see the nature background, as I suggested at the beginning. I was going to say, Alicia, thank you so much. And I am really like the self-trust part of authenticity, I thought was a really good way. And also just the power of the self-compassion element I thought was really good. But before we go, Alicia, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
I don't really. I think that we've covered so many things. It's just, let's put the sorting hat on every kid and just churn them out with all 3 straight out.
Perfect. Well, I guess some people would have been listening to this and going, this has been a great conversation. I want to learn more about this. You were talking about a little bit about a book, but where else would you direct people to sort of get in contact with you and tell us a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, look, thank you. I would suggest everything kind of starts from the website and you can get links from there. So check out the website at saplingminds.com.au. It's got all the links to the socials and everything from there. The book itself, so I wrote this parenting focused book that is really practical in its application. You get a little bit of the theory along the journey, but for the most part, it's just this practical guidebook on tools and tips and strategies and how can we put these 3 pillars into action. And so I wrote that a couple of years ago, and it launched last year. And I mean, it won gold for best nonfiction book. It was it launched as an Amazon #1 bestseller. So it was really well received. And I think it's just simply what I keep hearing from the parents who've read it and then come back to work with me after the book as well and continue to expand on it, is that they sit there going, look, I knew about self-trust being important. I knew that resilience was important. I knew that they needed to have creativity and innovative thinking, but I'd never thought of it the way that it's kind of wrapped up in there. So it's just being able to have that really sort of practical, grounded approach on, well, how do I now take this on and start learning it? So you can also buy those on my website as well. But yeah, I think everything goes from the website.
Well, that's good. That makes it nice and easy. Well, that link is going to be available in the podcast description right now, so you can go check out all those things and read the book and I guess look at more of the resources. What an amazing conversation. As John said, we're going to have you back to have another chat because this was really interesting and I've taken a lot of notes. To everybody that's been listening, thank you so much and sharing. Really appreciate it. To everybody that was on today, thank you so much. What an amazing conversation. Guests and regulars. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.